Good morning or good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you're logging in from. Thanks for joining in this exciting webinar on the topic of women, data and tech, enabling smart water management in India. So to begin with, a quick introduction of the SWAN Forum itself. The SWAN Forum was established more than 10 years ago and has now become the leading hub of the smart water and wastewater sector. Brings together close to 200 leading utilities, solution providers, academics, investors, regulators, and other experts to proactively influence the water sector. SWAN India Alliance is leading one of the supporting initiatives is to drive smart water, especially in the emerging markets. And that is one reason we've partnered with Safe Water Network and quite a few other partners, as you can see on the screen. At this point, I would pass on to Gillian to welcome the webinar. Gillian?
Great. Hello, everybody. On behalf of Safe Water Network India, the Safe Water Enterprise Alliance in India, and the Sustainable Enterprises in Water and Health Initiative, as well as the SWAN Forum, I'd like to welcome you all to this important and timely event in honor of International Women's Day. Well, I don't have the facts to fully back this up. I like to believe that there is no coincidence that International Women's Day and World Water Day fall within the same month of March. Water access and quality and the lack thereof have an immeasurable impact on the lives of millions of women around the world. And while we still have a lot of work to do in expanding women's access to water, we are also seeking ways to bring women into the water value chain, not only as water users, but as active participants in supply, management, and decision-making as well. Smart technologies, accompanied by strong data management and analysis, are a critical part of solving this participation puzzle. Safe Water Network has, like many of you, transitioned many of its knowledge and learning events to the virtual space due to COVID. We are particularly excited that we've been able to work with Smart Water Network's forum to bring together a really illustrious panel of speakers today who've come from key stakeholder groups across the water, women, and technology ecosystem, from implementers to technology providers and to policymakers. We have a lot to learn from them, and through our breakout sessions later in the event, I hope that they get the opportunity to learn from you as well. This event and the breakout sessions will all be recorded, so we hope that it will serve as a useful resource in the future. And with that, I'll pass it back to Fred.
Thanks, Gillian. Shana, if you can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I think the reason we set up this webinar is, of course, India has set an ambitious goal as part of the Jal Jeevan mission to provide functional household tap connections, by 2025 with an investment of more than $51 billion set for this. And we brought together an exciting mix of leading women professionals. So happy Women's Day to all our speakers and all the members in the audience, because we thought it would be an excellent opportunity to bring participants from the different parts of the value chain and share their knowledge and experience, because there's an opportunity to see how you can conceptualize, deploy, and operate water services in India. And I think we have an excellent agenda with some exciting speakers and also an opportunity for the audience to participate in the interactive breakout sessions. Here, the audience have an opportunity to speak with the various speakers after their presentations, to share their thoughts as well as their ideas. And then we will wrap it up with some closing remarks and the key takeaways from this session. At this point, I would pass it on to Shana. We have a few questions to run as a poll. Shana, over to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today. I've just launched a poll, so we would love your feedback to really engage and get something beneficial out of this. Thanks. And Fred, we can continue a little bit while people are submitting their answers.
Great. Thanks, Sheena. At this point then, I would like to introduce Poonam Sevak of the Safe Water Network. Poonam's been with the Safe Water Network for more than 10 years, and the more people I speak in the water industry in the UK, in India, and everyone speak of Poonam with a high regard of the work that Poonam's been doing with the Safe Water Network, and also the discussions I've had with Poonam leading up to setting up this webinar, and the work that she's supporting the Indian government on the policy initiatives. So Poonam will set the context for this webinar with a short presentation. And then after that, Poonam would be moderating a panel where we have the speakers from the panel who would present their opening remarks and a panel discussion. So for the first, presentation, I would pass it on to Poonam, who will be talking about enabling smart water management in India. Poonam? Poonam, you might be on mute. There you go.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. A very, very warm welcome to you. Happy International Women's Day. It's a pleasure to have you with us, dear panelists and participants, for this very important discussion, Women, Data and Tech. Women and water, as we all know, are very inseparable. There is lots of empirical evidence that women, wherever they are, if involved in water management, planning and design, the results of the program are better. I will have with me on my panel 4 experts, stalwarts and practitioners from this field who have been working for multiple years to bring safe water access to women as the primary pivot to bring about gender equality. And I purely believe that this is the way to go to bring gender equality. In this world of changing, rapid change today, which is more intensified due to the pandemic also, technology is one of the saviors, a method to deliver services, be it health services, water services, anything. And it has become very easy to adopt technology, and technology is low cost. Similarly, data is the primary tool for all of us in this world to measure, plan, budget, and everything. And we will hear more about all this as we go. Before I start speaking about my presentation, I want, there will be many stories from people across the world about the new feats which women have attained. What I would like to basically focus on are 2 stories which are very close to my heart and it has touched my life. The first was in 2003. It began in the city of Ranchi, Jharkhand, and thereafter to Orissa, which are both low-income states of India. The women took it upon themselves to be auto drivers and came the concept of pink auto. Pink auto did not mean that they'll be ferrying women passengers only. The driver was a woman in a completely male bastion. It was a very remarkable feat. The second story is from one of the home states where we work, Telangana, where as recently as December 2020, the women won the court case that in the power distribution system, they have to be given a job. When they were told that you cannot climb the 18 feet electricity pole, wear a harness around you and do repairs, they quickly climbed up the pole, did all the work, and thus removed one more gender disaggregation point. So this is where we see women from our grassroots. Coming to the presentation, data is very important. All the countries are doing it. In the WASH space, the biggest data and tech collection has been done at the global level by the WHO UNICEF JMP report, where they found out completely about the services which are present in water, sanitation, quality. The data is disaggregated by user, by country, by quality, and it is there for the whole world, for each country to draw lessons and take remedial action so that their citizens can have a good life. In India, we are using the Jal Jeevan mission with live data dashboards where functional house tap connection is given and it is noted on a daily basis. Similarly, for the sanitation, the data was collected through an app, which is called the Swachhata app. And this has helped bring rigor to the program, speed to the program, and finish. Next slide, please. What did Safe Water Network do? Safe Water Network, along with Honeywell, did the Water Aunties program. We did not name it Water Aunties. The community named it because these women were supplying safe water. What we did was bring in technology of automated 24/7 dispensing water systems, remote monitoring systems, automatic aggregation of data, creation of analytical reports. So women were drawn to become entrepreneurs, operators, community mobilizers. They gained a standing in the society at the social level, at the political level, just because they had money in their purse. Next, we came with the program of Water Aunties 2. Next slide, please. What did we do here? Under the program supported by USAID, Sustainable Enterprises for Water and Health, we are working with the small water enterprises. These are some of the partners which you see on the right side of the slide. All these partners and us got together to collectively share our insights and learnings and help develop digital tools which are called Small Water Enterprise Entrepreneur Tools. They are all hosted on the website for everybody to use so that each organization is not carrying the developmental work of their own type for operations, management, training, gap analysis, assessment, so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So, what did we learn in this? We learned that the women participation in the value chain of water is fairly less. They are missing in water utilities. How can more tech be used? How can gender participation be increased? And we all work together at the Safe Water Enterprise Alliance to answer these 4 questions and develop the tool. And finally, last slide, please. We all know that safe water is a challenge which we chose. Gender empowerment is a challenge that we chose because we believe that goal 6 can support the attainment of goal 5 faster. So thank you very much. Now I will invite my panelists to introduce themselves. So may I ask Pia from Grundfos to give her introduction, please, Pia?
Apologies, Poonam. Pia just rejoins. She got a bit cut off here.
As we wait for Pia, may I ask Pooja to give her introduction?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Poonam, for giving such a amazing introduction at the beginning for the programs that we're running. Quick one, I'm Pooja Thakran. I'm the Senior Director of Corporate Communications and CSR with Honeywell. And I'm really honored to be here to just share my learnings and talk about the program that we've been working with Poonam and with the Safe Water Network and taking it forward. So thanks a lot, Poonam.
Thank you, Pooja. Ravina?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, here from India Geography. I'm Praveena Sridhar. I'm managing the India programs for charity from UK called Frank Water. And I'm really excited to meet Poonam and all the other panelists who are working on some very amazing things in the wash sector. Look forward to the entire session. Thank you.
Ritika?
Hi all, I am Ritika Chopra. I am firstly a very happy Women's Day to all the panelists and the participants, and congratulations to SWAN Network and Safe Water Network for hosting such an important session. Thank you all. So I am Ritika Chopra, working with the USAID as an acting gender advisor. I'm providing support to revitalize the USAID efforts to advance gender equality and female empowerment in India. Thank you, and I look forward to participating in this event and hearing from all you all. Thank you.
Pia?
Yes, thank you, Poonam, and sorry I lost connection there, so I had to just reconnect. Thank you so much to SWAN and Safe Water Network for hosting this and then inviting me into this amazing panel with like-minded women. Very excited to start up the panel debate, where I'll also say a few more words about who is Grundfos and Safe Water, so we can save it for that time. Thanks a lot. Very excited to be here.
So to my participants, all these 4 women on the panel are practitioners, stalwarts, and experts in their own space, and they hold a very, very strong place. So now we will go into a brief presentation so that we get exposed to their work. We know what they are doing and we can understand it better. So let's begin with Pia. Pia from Grundfos.
Thank you so much. And I just shut off my video because it appears my connection is not great. So to make sure I don't lose it as I'm presenting, I'm just gonna shut it off. Thank you so much again for inviting me. I'm happy to represent Grundfos Safe Water, which is a strategic business unit in Grundfos that I'll say a few more words about afterwards, just to contextualize. We're focused on making water work and really bringing water to some of the most water poor communities in this world. And of course, women and children play a huge role in fetching water throughout the world. So it has typically an enormous impact on the opportunities for women in communities where water actually becomes available. Next slide, please. So just to put a few words on who we are, then we are part of Grundfos. Grundfos was, let's say, born in a small village in Denmark right after World War II, when there was not a lot of anything. So Paul Du Jensen, who was an engineer, wanted to help a neighbor who needed water and built in his basement the pump you see on the top here, which was also called the Pig, and you can probably guess why. We've been in India for decades as well, and we support both plumber education and hundreds of villages with water. We work with local NGOs like Graham Vickers and others. We're foundation owned today. It's not a philanthropic arm. It means that the foundation is actually our owners who own 90% of our stock, which means that the way we do business is very much centered around family values that are at the heart of the business, long-term thinking, responsible business, and we don't talk much about shareholder value, we talk about stakeholder value. So I included here also just a couple of selections from some of our milestones that had to do with data. You can see here in 1984, Grundfos invented CAPS, which was the first pump calculation program for commercial use, using an Apple II computer that you can see depicted here. And this would, of course, be one of those machines that my children almost would not know what is. They saw a phone the other day and thought it was a watch. So I think we're in another time age now, just a small 30, 40 years later. In 91, Grundfos was also the first company to launch the intelligent pump. which just made pumping extremely efficient. So energy efficiency has been a huge part of the way we do business, and really being at the frontier of making intelligent products that continually optimize the ability for pumps and now pump systems and water solutions to become more and more efficient. So a lot of people thought we were crazy when we did all of these things, and honestly, we do execute ideas that turn out to be very bad ideas, but sometimes, you know, good ideas turn into very good ones, and some sort of madness can turn into magic. And I think that's important when we talk about data, because in my view, we're not at all where we will end up when it comes to really turning data into actionable insights and actionable impact. Next slide, please. So if we look at what data and intelligence can really do for water and energy, then we know the issues. You know, water scarcity will affect 40% of global population. You know, by 2050, we're going to need 60% increase in agriculture production. 150,000 people join us every day, so we're also getting more and more people, and typically also in the areas of the world that are very water stressed, including, of course, India. So these are a couple of pictures from some of our Indian projects that have been sponsored by the foundation. So just to give examples of what data can do and intelligence, you know, we can identify pipe leaks, 45 billions of liters, I think it's supposed to say here, is wasted every day. You can do predictive maintenance, so you don't have as much downtime. You can even do predictive weather data and spot paths of massive rain. So coupling some of the specific data around water systems to weather data and other sort of satellite-driven data these days. And of course, if you move this down to the individual water system level, there is huge potential to optimize performance in the individual water system. If you go to the next slide, please, then what we see here is, next slide, please, sorry. What you will see, I'm still seeing the old slides, I don't know about you guys, but if once we hit the next slide, you will see what we call a value chain. It is extremely simplified from identifying a need to how you finance to actually tapping water is really a rather long way. So we sat down with some of our key stakeholders to actually create at least an approximation of what happens and where we as technology partner have missing links or missing insights along this value chain, because of course we have blind angles and areas where we need to partner. But if you think of this, you know, imperfect value chain, information and data and insights has to pass to someone else typically many times from where you actually identify a need till you meet that need and sustain that need. So I use this view to remember that each of us here in this meeting see this ecosystem from different points of view, which means that we often have different constraints, different needs and challenges we need to solve. And actually quite often we're not equipped with the same level of information. We're not sharing information. So this is where data also plays a huge role, and the improvements in ability to share data. So hopefully you can also recognize where you are in this imperfect value chain, and everyone along this journey have to see the value in what each step brings to the table. So it's rather incredible, in my view, every time we reach someone with water, because a lot of different pieces of a puzzle have to fall into place. So what can data do to you? You know, for the individual system, if we get better access and better ability to pass on accurate information as we move through the value chain, that is one part of this picture. But we also need data to move from the end and start collecting data and understand how we can design and identify needs even better than we are today. So if you move to the next slide, please. Then this is actually a film, and I don't know if you can click it there. I should have turned off the sound, because then you guys can watch it while we talk about this slide. If you go to the bottom, typically the play button will show up if you click on the left there. No, one slide back. You can try and see if you can make it work. It's the picture over there. But what we developed in Grundfos is certainly often intelligent, and some would say over-intelligent, and perhaps they're right. But we have used and are using data very actively to maintain and troubleshoot remotely every day. So after more than 5 years in the field for some of our more intelligent products like the AQ Tab, we're also beginning to understand user behavior because we're having a bigger amount of data. So if the movie on the left played, you would see the AQ Tab in a village in India, together with our AQ Pure and our pumps and so on. So like a full water system that's actually also has the ability to connect and bring back quite a lot of data points that I'll show you now. So if we look at user behavior, we've always, as an example, thought that people fetch water in the morning and in the afternoon, and that's how systems have been designed. You know, water systems would be kept open in the morning and the late afternoon or evening. But as you can make more intelligent systems that doesn't need to have opening and closing hours, and where water is available throughout the day, we actually found that water usage happens throughout the day. So this is what happens when water is reliable and available throughout the day. You actually see here that most people will fetch water throughout the day. We also know that pending other water resources locally, most people will actually fetch as little as 2 or 3 liters per day of drinking water if you have to pay for it. So it means that we often see that water systems are vastly oversized because they're made to serve 15 to 50 liters per person. There can be good reasons to oversize the system. You know, people move around, urban areas will grow. But what we often see is that, you know, when people start expanding the network, they're not expanding the pressure, for instance, which means that very little water will be coming out of the last tap that you install. So with remote monitoring and collecting the data in more sort of a big data way, you can get these insights that actually can feed back in the loop and help you create a more sustainable water system to begin with. And we also often say that, you know, when you make a decision to have a water system, it's not really a decision to install a water system as much as it is a decision to operate and maintain a water system, because the upfront investment is only the first part of any system. Maintaining and operating it is going to be the most important after that. If we move to the next slide, then this just shows you what data can do for you. So not only in urban modern buildings, you know, where it can be extremely useful to have connected intelligent products that collect data and share data with you continually, it can be extremely useful also for individual installations serving the most vulnerable. The breakdown rates for especially rural water points is extremely high. I mean, anything between 25 to over 50% is what I've seen. And often, again, it's because there is no focus or funds to operate and maintain the systems. You know, according to UNICEF, women and children spend more than 200 million hours every day to collect water. That's like a colossal waste of time. And if you add on top of that, our ability to service systems in rural areas where we need to travel there, and sometimes you're out water for weeks because you can't get a service guy there, we actually take care of more than 70% of issues remotely in some of our systems where you are connected. And we can see, is this a question of, you know, do we need a software update? Is it because the tank is actually empty? Is it maybe a pump problem? So you don't need a service guy to get there. You can actually guide someone locally to troubleshoot and find out what the issue is.
Pia, may I
and if I yes.
Pia, may I ask you to be a bit quick?
Yes, we're at the last slide here. If you take the last slide, then just a couple of specific data again from the field here to bring it all back to connecting the individual installation to more sort of macro data. So you can couple specific data from your systems, and to the left here I have the our Indian portal. This is just our showcase portal for all of the connected pumps under, you know, these big Christmas schemes and others, where you can couple stuff, for instance, to rainfall and actually predict your water usage. Because as you can see here, water usage and rainfall goes together inversely. So it means you can predict your water usage, your spend, your income, and your whole business model around water. So small water works, you can also know that your income will fluctuate over the year and plan for that. And you can also use all of this information as you design your systems. So that's all I wanted to say with the case, and just navigate back to data. Really, I think we haven't seen at all what we can do with data to drive actionable insights, design, and research around what can actually be done, also to see women's perspectives as we move into AI and other areas where water systems really become intelligent, and making sure that they fit also women's needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia. Now, without not losing much time, over to you, Pooja.
Okay, thank you, Poonamji, and thank you, Pia, for the insights that you brought in on the technology piece and on the parts that you mentioned about data. Before I start, I would like to once again say a good afternoon, and I wish all the women and also the men a very, very happy Women's Day. I would also like to extend my heartiest greetings to all the panelists, as well as a special mention to SWAN India Alliance for really organizing this entire event and this panel discussion. May I move to the next slide? And I would like to give you a quick context around what we are doing at Honeywell, because what we're trying to do is address this whole issue of water scarcity. And there are a lot of stats that are already in the public domain about water scarcity. But I would like to mention that if you look at the World Economic Forum, and when they talked about what does India really need to be able to be the fastest growing economy, and we all have the ambition of making sure that India is the fastest growing economy. They pointed out that there are 7 big challenges to addressing that and reaching that ambition. And a couple of those challenges I can quickly rattle out. One is upskilling youth is a big initiative that we need to take up. The issue of solving for the issue of healthcare, sanitation, water, women empowerment, all of these are the broad challenges that they talk about. So with this program that Honeywell conceptualized, we are addressing, I would say, 3 challenges out of those 7. And I'll come to that and talk about those challenges that we're addressing through this. Another data point and stats that I would like to set the context is Niti Aayog, when they talked about which is the biggest crisis that India will see in the modern world and across the history of history of India. It's going to be the water crisis, and we already see that coming into shape with the Chennai city actually going through a lot of water crisis. We've seen it in parts in Bangalore. We've seen it in a couple of like Nainital. I visited it during one of my holidays, and I was stunned. The whole Naini Jheel was actually dry. I mean, I've grown up in that area. I've grown it seeing it is always full of water, but it was like very heart wrenching and very heartbreaking to see that that iconic Naini Jheel was totally dry. So so these are some of the things that I would like to point out, that water scarcity and the crisis that we are facing with water is very intense. Almost like 75% of households will not have clean drinking water in India. They do not have. And out of those 75% of households, 80% of the water is actually left to women and girls to go and fetch that water. And that is a huge drudgery that women face. So if you look at the crisis of water, I think women are very central to the whole issue of, and they're also the ones who actually are the ones who are bearing all the brunt with water scarcity. And yeah, and to just top it all with the kind of daily chores that they do, right from looking after the children, getting the water, looking after cattle. Agriculture is another area where they're now beefing up, because a lot of farm labor is now coming, is basically comprises of women. So if you look at that, and then to add to that, they do a lot of work, almost like 5 hours a day. They actually just burn in just trying to get water in some of these rural areas, as much as 14,000 kilometers a day, a year. It is what they cover during the entire year. So these are stats which are alarming. They are really eye-opening. And I mean, this is the enormous the enormous drudgery that women face in India, and especially in the rural areas, which, I mean, a lot of us don't even think about. We don't even give it a thought. So with that as a backdrop, here is what Honeywell really tried to do to bring in the Safe Water Network and centralizing the role of women in managing the water stations that we've set up. So if I could talk through the statistics and metrics that we have put in place, from an operational point of view, there were about 185 IGL stations that we commissioned across Telangana and Maharashtra. I would say that this program would not have really taken shape without the support of Safe Water Network, which Poonam and the team are driving. And they are the partners who've really helped us to put this whole piece together. So there are about, almost like 6.5 lakh people who are gaining water through this entire network that we've created. Just to give you stats around the technology interventions that we've actually put in place, and largely that really helped us during COVID, is the remote monitoring systems that have led to less than 2% downtime in operating these stations, which is also a very huge achievement, because I think technology does play a significant role in ensuring that there is a very regular supply of clean drinking water across this. And that's again, thanks to the innovation and thanks to the entire model that has been put in place. From an innovation point of view, I think the model itself is very unique. If you look at the way we have commissioned some of these ATM facilities for water, these are largely owned by women entrepreneurs. And that allows them to really be central to the whole work that we are trying to do across giving women the central role in actually managing the water stations and managing the water ecosystem. So that's a very significant role that women play across this whole model that we've created. We've also done some interventions around can washing systems, which are automated. These are solar panel enabled. So there is again, the downtime does play a very significant role, because there is reduction. We don't have to depend so much on electricity supply. And then, I did talk about the whole piece around remote monitoring, which is very significant. We can collect a lot of data. We know how much each household is really utilizing these water stations in the community. So there is a lot of good work, and there is a lot of statistics that are put in place, and these metrics are very, very significant to us, because we're able to gauge how the ATMs are really panning out. So if I could move to the next slide, and I would like to talk about the learnings from this program. And I'm going to be very, very honest about some of the learnings. And as I say, it's a continuous learning process for us. Not that we have really achieved the goal in a way, because for us, this is a program which is very central to the CSR model that we've created within Honeywell. But there are certain things that I felt that we need to take into account and see how we can strengthen this program. For us, this is a very solid flagship program that we would like to nurture as we go along. So one of the things that I really wanted to address is the whole cost structures around putting this in place, and see how we can make it a sustainable model. We have tried to work through the sustainable model by actually making sure that there are earnings out of this, but then we see that we've not been able to make it self-sustainable. But that's a big piece that we would like to address as we go along. We need to see how we can remodel it and nurture it in such a way that it is self-sustainable. Another area that we would like to bring in is how do we make women the central piece in terms of the entire ecosystem management around these water ATMs that we've created. We do have women entrepreneurs, but I think we need to do much more in terms of looking at the overall overarching ecosystem that supports this entire mandate, and see how we can have women as a central part of the overall water management project. There are self-help groups that we need to explore more and exploit more, and see how they can play a pivotal role in making this whole ATM model, a very effective model, not just in making sure that the supply is seamless, but also to see how we can use the self-help groups to also ensure that we complement it by a very solid reserves of water that can be created in the communities, whether it is water, the natural resource rejuvenation and things. So I think that would be another significant area that we would like to use and explore. There is a need to come up with a holistic approach to how we want to take up at a multiple level the various interventions that we need to take, and technology will definitely play a very pivotal role in creating this. So we are also thinking about some of these interventions as we go along. So whether it is infrastructure management, efficient technology, water conservation, these are all complementing programs that we need to integrate into our program. And lastly, I think influencers will play a very significant role in mobilizing women in taking up this whole owning this whole ecosystem, also getting more trained on these ecosystem, whether it is like a plumber, mobilizing resources in the organization to make sure we have sustainable agriculture and farming that we can take up. So these are some of the areas that I think we need to explore more and make it a holistic water management program, rather than calling it a safe water or maybe a clean drinking water program that we have created. So those are some of the learnings. So if I move along, these are my recommendations. It's called a 4A model that we would like to put in place, starting with definitely a solid awareness program around how do we make sure that we create women who are water warriors and not just water consumers. So the whole idea is, can we create water warriors in the communities that we work with, who can not just talk about how water has to be consumed, but also how water has to be managed, whether it is conservation of water, making sure that we manage irrigation, which is much more sustainable, because almost 80% of the water resources are actually consumed by the agriculture production in India. And also look at how can we create, a ready supply of, natural water, which is rainwater harvesting, rejuvenating lakes and stuff like that. So a lot of awareness program is needed around this. Advocacy is another second big piece that I would.
Pooja-ji, now we have to close.
Yeah, I mean, just give me 2 minutes. I'll be very quick on this one. So advocacy is another one. How do we work with the communities and just ensure that we are taking up some of these programs? Action is another one, right from creating an ecosystem, managing that ecosystem by women in the community, and building the right frameworks around how do we manage, whether it is infrastructure management, fund management, repairs around the various the natural resources that you have available, and lastly taking accountability. So this is basically in a way the 4A model that we would like to create and have women as a central piece around creating this entire program. So that's from my side, and I'm handing it over back to Poonam.
Thank you, Pooja ji. And now over to Ritika from USAID.
Thank you, Poonam ji, and it's really good jumping from the private sector to the development sector, and I believe I completely kudos to both Pia and to Deepa ji from Honeywell for kind of proving that private sector and development sector go hand in hand to kind of meet the sustainable development goals that have been set. So kudos to all of you for doing such a great work. So as I move on to my presentation, I would like to introduce, for all of you who may not be familiar with USAID, USAID is basically a US government agency that leads the international development and the humanitarian efforts to save lives and reduce poverty around the world, and we are proud to champion women's empowerment across the globe. Can we move to the second slide, please? So for USAID, gender is the core of the development, and it's part of all our program implementation process. Our programs are designed with the goal of finding creative solutions to break the social and structural barriers that are faced by women and girls and ensure that they are viewed by all as equal partners. And I emphasize on equal partners because we always talk about, when we talk about women empowerment, there's always a kind of a power dynamics out there. So we always look for an equality. There is no a power game that's going on. So, and we kind of strive to integrate women into all our sectors and resolve gender concerns. It is mandated through our policy documents that you can see out there that the gender needs to be integrated throughout the whole life of our activity, beginning from the design, implementation, and monitoring. And it's for decades that USAID has adopted several comprehensive and interlinked policies and strategies to reduce gender inequality. So to talk about the gender equality, so we have the Women's Economic Empowerment Act of 2018. That is like a bipartisan legislation that is applicable solely to USAID within the US government, that is aimed to expanding gender equality and women's entrepreneurship in developing countries, including access to finance, ownership of assets, and allocation of resources. It makes basically the USAID responsible that all its activities are shaped by gender analysis. They use the standard indicators to assess activities, and gender equality and female empowerment are integrated throughout the agency's program cycle and related processes. We have a chapter in the agency's directive system on integrating gender equality and female empowerment in USAID's programs cycle. This is the entire program cycle that we talk about: design process, implementation, and the indicator process, the monitoring process. This chapter explains how to implement these policies and strategies across the program cycle, with a particular emphasis on the analytical rigor to strengthen evidence-based decision-making and support for the local ownership and the priorities of local actors and stakeholders. And as you can see, all these documents are public and they can be kind of found on USAID website. Moving on to the second slide. What you see out here is the list of the USAID standard indicators. These are the indicators that is like we have set together to talk about to basically kind of talk that what is measured gets done. So we are trying to close all the gender gaps out here. So in the strategic planning at the activity level, the outcomes of all our activities are adapted and translated into specific results with associated targets and indicators. USAID's gender equality and female empowerment and evaluation strategies, they require a rigorous monitoring and evaluation. In both performance monitoring and evaluation, our technical teams collect the sex disaggregated data for all people level indicators. And as and when it's relevant, we develop performance and context indicators to track changes in key gender gaps from baseline to end of project or end of activity results. Where getting sex disaggregated data is a requirement by law, we work on getting the gender sensitive indicators also, and I see this as a necessity to see what gaps are being closed and also to look at the unintended consequences of our activities. So it's not only the sex disaggregated data, but it's the gender sensitive indicators also that we stress upon. And the master indicator list that you see out here, they include 8 Washington, or you can call them the agency level designated cross-cutting indicators that cover gender equality, women's empowerment, gender-based violence, and women, peace and security. So we work with all our implementing partners to report on either of these gender indicators. These are the standard gender indicators. And we also work towards coming up with some custom indicators. So we're like not very hard focused on only these standard indicators. We work depending on the activity to kind of customize our indicators. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as I talked about that all our designs are shaped by a gender analysis. So I'm going to talk very specific to our WASH activities. And we work on these 4 levels to address gender, because when we did our gender analysis for our various activities or even at the project level, we have come out with some kind of the pertinent issues that we see are common across the entire WASH or the water and sanitation sector. So we are working at the 4 levels. And the pertinent issues that we found out was, which I'm sure that we all agree to, is that the patriarchal social norms prevent women from taking WASH-related leadership and decision-making positions, or even participating when elected, which contributes to gender unaware city WASH services. And this is despite the government has made some favorable provisions for it. And there are some water policies where it is inadequately supports women's participation and leadership in water planning and management. We all know that women have greater needs for toilets, but generally there are more public toilets for men and public toilets for women, and transgender persons do not meet their needs. And lastly, women are primarily responsible for household sanitation and hygiene work and benefit from a toilet, yet rarely do they engage in household decision-making regarding sanitation. So looking at these various issues, we kind of come out with these kind of 4 levels where USAID is addressing gender in all our activities to kind of build an agency of women, not only as consumers, as we talked about in our previous presentations, but to create an agency of women who are leaders, who are change makers and resourceful managers. So as we move on to our next slide, I'll talk to you and talk about some of our ongoing programs where we are kind of proving that women are more than the consumers and they can be used in various activities out here. So this activity that you see out here is from our activity called Moving India Towards Sanitation for All. We are working with the Urban Management Center called UMC that has created women-based committees to ensure the delivery of basic sanitation and hygiene services to urban slums. The women members that is a part of these committees, they regularly coordinate with both the local government and slum settlers to increase the number of individual household toilets and refurbish the sewer lines in the settlements. They also train, in fact, this is a ripple effect that we look at in our activities, in slum settlers about good sanitation and hygiene. So this activity, as I call the Misal activity, it supports the municipal corporation to engage women-led self-help groups as contractors to run the facilities, which also result in the income generation for women in the community. So we are not only building the agency of these women, but we're also working towards making them these women more economically self-reliant. Yeah. And to kind of quote an example, so working with in this particular activity, we have worked with the Sambalpur Municipal Corporation, and we have kind of 110 women-based committees across the target cities. And in Gujarat, we have about currently 135 community that play a very crucial role in the in our activity implementation. Moving on to a second slide. This is
hurry up, please.
Yeah, I will just take precisely maybe 2 minutes out here. This is to talk about another activity called the Pani or Swachhta Mein Sajidari. This is our activity with our partner called Cure. This promotes the healthy outcomes for the poor to reduce the household poverty by promoting service equity and improving liquid and solid waste management and creating health awareness. So through this activity, we're engaging with women and incorporate gender consideration in all our project activities that involve the provision of wash services and facilities in low-income settlements, and these where women are encouraged, mobilized, and supported to actively join in the decision-making process on the provision of wash services facilities in the communities. Just taking a second more out here, I just wanted to kind of tell you that this is an activity where we kind of use the digital solution to continue its wash advocacy during the COVID-19 lockdown.
We ask you to hurry up, please.
Yeah, so I'll just end up with kind of saying that through this activity, we have reached out to about 148 slums and about 113,000 households across 7 cities using women and the technology that's the WhatsApp by creating these self-help groups where they are kind of reinforcing hand washing. So these are some of the activities I'm going to highlight. I will not take much or more of your time, and we can talk in detail later.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Over to Praveena. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We can go to the next slide. I'm Praveena. I'm heading charities operations in India, and it's called Frankwater. We are based out of UK. The work we are doing in India is to do with making drinking water and sanitation available for marginalized communities who are, can be tribal communities who are remote. The government sanction cannot happen for all the villages in a panchayat and the kind like that, right? So the next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So I think Poonamji and Pia and even Ritika have gone in detail about the problem, right? In short, if I have to say something, in India, according to the JMP report, the WHO, the United Nations, all the reports, we have 96% of urban areas have covered in terms of improved water access. And similarly, is the 85% of rural India. But like Poonamji again mentioned, please next. The water crisis is not done. Every summer, we hear of water fights. Next. Recently, the summer has not yet begun, and in Goa, the government is already thinking of what to plan for the water crisis. The next. And as recent as a week ago, we see that groundwater crisis is threatening not just drinking water, even our food security, right? So if you have to step back a little bit and then articulate what the problem is not to do just with managing the water resource, but also to do with the fact that there is no water to manage. There is scarcity right now. Right? Next slide, please. The challenge is, if we have to broadly classify, access still remains a challenge. A dry trap is still no access, right? And the access, whichever improved water access is said, it's really not actually allowing people to, get water conveniently at the time they need, right? And if we have pipelines, like Fred started out the session saying that we want to see how this entire group can participate in India's Jal Jeevan mission to make pipeline water as a dream come true for every citizen, right? But if you see the amount of pipeline work that has gone in across the country or the world, funded by the governments, funded by charities, anybody, the pipes are running dry, the taps are running dry, right? This is an undisputed problem. God knows how many billions of money has been gone into the good intention of making water available, but the taps are still dry. Next slide. The issue is that, especially with respect to India, is the fragmentation of administration of water resources. When I say that, in India, water is not looked at as one resource which is governed, but it is governed based on what is its utility. Like if it's irrigation water, it's the agriculture department looking at its piped water. It'll be the public water, the public engineering works department that will look at it. If it is for lakes and other purposes, drinking water purposes, it's the drinking water ministry which is looking at it. Overall, water is not looked at as one resource that has to be governed by in unison by these people, and decision making on water exploitation or management being done in consultation with all types of utilizations, right? And the next point remains, let's say even there is an understanding that water has to be looked at as a one monolith resource, which is divided among food production, and other purposes. There is no capacity that lies at the local government level. When I say local government, what is it? Country, state, within the state are provinces, within the provinces are gram panchayats. These most decentralized use of unit of governance, the water is not managed well, or rather it's not managed scientifically, right? And if somebody is doing it, all these cases are beautiful, best practices never scaled up. So the Jal Shakti ministry as such is an attempt to look at water as one resource and take it up, right? So the efforts are going on in those directions, but there is a lot more that has to go in I think Frankwater with our partners has been able to work out a solution. Next slide. Yeah, next slide. So the solution, in our opinion, has been to make the high-tech science technology available in the hands of people who are the decision makers at the community level, starting with the household. The woman who's a decision maker, she should be able to make the decision. The community workers, in our case, we have majority of the women who work with us through our partners, work in the Gram Panchayats within the confine of their villages. They do not have the ability or consent of the family to move out and be part of solution making. But they are the smartest people when it comes to understanding their problem and therefore the solution also. So whatever we have proposed as a solution allows participation of women in solution making, not just defining the problem, not just defining the needs of themselves, their villages or anything. In this particular slide, we have with us Hina, who cannot move out of a village because the family doesn't agree for her to move out of the village, but still she can participate in architecting the solution for her village. Manjeet is again a warrior of sorts, I would say, who has been able to get programs of drinking water sanitation, technological thinking using GIS in solution architecture in states like Chhattisgarh, which is a predominantly tribal population. Anita, although her picture in the slide may look like a very innocent lady, she's the brain behind a lot of hydrogeological thinking, what kind of thinking has to go into making any wash intervention sustainable. Next slide, please. So as I said, what is the solution to look at water as one resource and manage it well? All of us here, or majority of us here who have been working in this sector know that. We have heard of it enough number of times: integrated water resource management, integrated urban water resource management, rural water management, everything integrated, right? But it's always remained in the conferences, in the high teas and discussion between the PhDs, but the solution was never available in a tangible form, in a form where a person can actually implement it, right? So the next slide, please. Frankwater, in collaboration with Manjeet, Pooja, Hina, Anita, and another, engineering consulting firm, Arup, came up with a solution called Wash Connect app. So this has been a 2-year-long journey for all of us, Arup, Frankwater, and our partners. And in this journey, what we have found is that we all came up with a toolkit as a solution, like any other toolkit. Like I have been a consultant to UNICEF, World Bank, and a couple of other projects. We've always come up with some very beautiful toolkits with a lot of heart and sweat going into it. But these toolkits always stay in the beautiful cupboards of those organizations which have funded it and the ones who have created it. It's never used, right?
Ravina, may I ask you to hasten up slightly?
Yeah, okay. How much minutes I have, Pooja?
2.
Okay, so this tool is something which is available on the mobile phones of anybody who wants to make a solution. I will just quickly run through the tools formats. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next. Next. Yeah, what does this tool mean? Like we need, like everybody was speaking until now, data-driven decision-making is very important, right? So we have developed, there are enough forms, Google Forms, ODKs, Kobo, and the sort, which allows data collection at the mobile phone in a very accurate manner, even the geological data. So we have been using those tools to do the data collection, designing forms, and these data is used to look at a problem, and the decisions are made based on these granular data that is collected. And the solution collaboration with the communities whose problem we are trying to solve. Next slide, please. We have worked in the 2 geographies of Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. Next one. And we have piloted it here. It's a 6-step tool, wherein the need assessment, visits, the intense data collection, all of it is done through Kobo, and working on the Indian Space Research Organization's, open to all development platform with all the GIS data. Next. Overall, it has taken us only, it just requires a high school graduate and a couple of months of training for the entire thing to be rolled out. Next. Next. So this is the amount of data that we collect. I think SWAN will make all the decks available to everyone. It's all detailed groundwater, flow, surface water, hydrogeological data collected by local people. Next. So we get a shape file based on the GPS locations, and these layers are superimposed on the satellite imagery, which is provided for free through Bhuvan platforms. You can skip to the last slide now. Yeah, so maybe a slide before. So what happens is in this entire process, based on the data collected and the GIS platform, open source platform available, people are able to see where to drill a borehole. What kind of check dam should I put? What kind of intervention should I do? So do that the surface water and the rainwater that is coming to me, which is already surplus, is available for me during the summer, right? In this way, what we have seen is that people have felt very, very inspired to be part of the solutions. And this entire journey, although we started out to just solve the wash problems in communities, we see that it's also making women's participation in the entire ecosystem of solution designing very accessible. So, yeah, that is all.
Thank you very much, Praveena. Thank you very much for the presentation. And in fact, we are very glad that all our panelists, Grundfos, who were talking about data-driven, artificial intelligence, data collection, development of an ecosystem for that data so that it is transferred for getting the most appropriate action, because it's a data-driven action point. Coming after that, how Honeywell has been managing data using remote monitoring system, tracking and putting women central to their program. Then we heard the most important work which is being by the USAID, keeping women at the center and wanting to have sex disaggregated data built into the program so that they are able to measure the impact, followed by the Wash Basin Tool app, which was showcased by Praveena, which is teaching us how in these times of water scarcity and water crisis, all the panelists said that we are heading for a water crisis. And this water crisis will be the biggest hurdle for India to realize its GDP dream of reaching multiple trillions. How do we do that? And in all these 4 programs, we saw that private sector, government sector, or development agencies, NGO, everyone is putting women central to the program, completely understanding that women are important for the development journey, having complete faith. The need of the hour is that we are able to bring in more women into our program, do a longer bit of hand holding, because as was spoken by one of the panelists, that World Economic Forum is listing that the most critical change which we can bring about is by upskilling youth, by giving WASH. So these are some of the solutions. I can see the clock ticking. We are reaching 4:10. And now it is the time for us to have breakout sessions. So I will hand it over to Frederick.
The breakout room where we're going to be discussing business models. I think it looks like we're 15 people in this room, so I'm not sure we want to do a round of introductions. I think on my side, I can put a few words to what we're thinking about business models, which really leads back to the presentation I made on the value chain, because I think that a lot of decisions are made on upfront cost, which is completely understandable. But if you look at the value chain, it's really only the first step of a whole value chain, which is the funding upfront, as compared to, let's say the full value, the total cost of ownership. So I think this is one of the struggles we have, of course, because we want to make people have the same ability to choose technology everywhere in the world and have access to the same technology. What often ends up happening is that the poorest pays more for the same because of the inability to have funding for upfront costs. So for instance, buying small package of washing powder is going to be more expensive than buying just one big package, as probably most of us in this room would do. And it's the same with the water system, you know, that you can be forced to choose something that may have a higher total cost of ownership, higher lifetime costs, because of the upfront payment you need to make. This can be as simple as, you know, even a diesel-driven water system instead of a system running on solar. And I think some of the schemes running now in India are really interesting in this respect when it comes to innovative business model where you can, where farmers can actually get money back by feeding, you know, electricity into the grid. So you kind of have a reverse meter there. We've seen some of that. I worked a lot with feed-in tariffs, both in Asia and in Africa before, and in Europe as well. And feed-in tariffs can really drive development and drive new business models, and also drive technology development. So I think it would be great to hear from you guys in this session, you know, what are your challenges when it comes to business models? Because honestly, in my view, I don't think water access has a lot to do with technology. We have the technology to solve, you know, water access. So it's definitely other things that are keeping us from getting water access to everyone. And upfront cost is, of course, one of the areas that we struggle with, given that we focus on total cost of ownership and not the upfront cost of a system. So how can we more, you know, efficiently reach more people with the water systems that they need? And here I think we need to look at the challenges around the business model more than the challenges around, you know, we don't have access to the right technology. The technology is there, but it's, let's say, not equally divided or not equally accessible to everyone. So I'll open the floor here and maybe get some reflections, and if someone has, you know, experience to share what they have seen in the field, it leads to system breakdowns, leads to, you know, a suboptimal system being installed. I think that would be really interesting and a good foundation on which to have a discussion around, you know, what is a sustainable water system and what are the business models that may need, or what are the key challenges that business models need to address to really get more sustainable water systems out there. Amir, Frederick, any of you want to add anything to this?
No, very well summarized. I think it'll be great. We've seen comments already. Ravi, you would mention something. You can kick it off, and then after that, anyone, just unmute yourself and take your turn. Ravi? Ravi?
Yeah. My point is basically in the water business, we find it very difficult to raise initial capital or the funds, especially because water businesses worldwide do not make money. When we support the urban ministry, we find that 90% of the cities do not recover their operating cost. When we come to villages, we find that their initial capital has got to be funded either through philanthropy or through government. But even in running the operations, we can only support up to the village level financials. That's also an excellent outcome, because in most of the cases, people are not even able to fund the village level expenditure of operator, entrepreneur, CNC, meaning chemicals and consumables, power, etc. Another issue which you raised, Pia, was the breakdowns. For breakdowns, we have felt that it is extremely important to have a sustainability fund or asset renewal fund, because suddenly we found that in a village where power was okay, suddenly the fluctuations went from 100 to 300 volt. So we had to add, say, $500 of voltage stabilizer. But if we did not have an asset renewal fund or a sustainability fund, it would not have been possible. So these are some of the observations when we talk about the water businesses that intrinsically don't have the ability to recoup money or generate surpluses, especially when water access for poor is essential need for people. It's a basic requirement, and a lot of government politicians for their coming in, they promise free water. For example, in Delhi and Hyderabad, all the citizens are given 20,000 liters of water free of charge each month. The whole family, meaning not citizen, but the one entire family. So the ensuing cost is almost $100 million for a bigger metro and $50 million for a smaller metro, but that are funded by tax dollars. So overall, water, we still believe, has to have a business angle with the goodness angle, both intertwined. And hence my request to view water a bit above only as a business model, and probably run it like 1862 Napoleon ran with Suez or Veolia, where they put in the complete capital, the tax dollars, and then operations were given to these two entities way back then. And gradually see how you can enhance the viability, like a lot of German cities have been able to do so, that they are able to recoup their costs as well. So these are some of my observations. So we have to tone down our expectations to a level where it is reasonable and you give a manageable size of business model to the water utility or micro utility specifically.
Very interesting points. Yeah. Very interesting points, Ravi. Any other members in the breakout room want to share their thoughts? Just unmute yourself and
well, while you think about it, I think that's a really good point, because you know there's a lot of buzz around this. Yeah, we just need new business models. We just need we've put in the capital cost. We're running a bigger project in Ghana, for instance, where we've put in the full capital cost and done a public-private partnership with rural water. But we're running into the same now with COVID. There's free water. There's no. I'm sorry, the neighbor is making a major. He just sold the house to someone new, so I can't stop them. So now there's free water, so we don't really get any cash flow right now. It's the most vulnerable people we're talking about. Obviously, we're not going to cut off the water because they're not paying. So there are huge risks around this. So I actually like this really good reflection around expectations. You know, are we like now pinning all our hopes on private sector to come up with the brilliant business model that will, you know, almost like save all the people today who don't have access? And I think that's very true. I continually ask myself, what is my role as private sector? Because water is a human right. Yeah. And, you know, I can't cut off water to someone who's not paying their water bill when they're among the most vulnerable people in this world. So there are a lot of dilemmas with private sector moving into this space. You know, we need partnerships around this with governments, with NGOs and others to protect people's rights. And of course, also to protect our business interests. So I don't know what the answer is, honestly, but I think really spot on reflections.
Is there a point, is there a role for technology to play? And this is again for the other members in the breakout room as well, you know, especially if you look at the topic of data and tech, you know, so on a business model, right, especially on the challenges in the rural sector, it would be great to hear from people in the room. Do they see an opportunity for technology to kind of play a role? Anyone who's worked on something interesting who would like to share a case study of a new business model? Yeah, Kunero, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Though my name is Vijay Lakshmi, some of you whom you know me, but others may not. I work with Development Alternatives. We haven't played enough in the urban sector. So I'm curious to listen to all the all the presenters today were presenting a technology-based intervention, both in terms of information, quality, management, and everything is managed through technology, and huge investments have been made with a social objective. And the business model, especially in the drinking water sector, it will not work because the volumes people are going to be paying for, and the people are going to be paying is not enough for the amount of investment we are making, especially from looking at all the case studies that I have seen. But maybe to bring an analogy, the business model itself might have to change a little bit more towards aggregating the technology providers at one place. It could be solar pumping people, because you are putting together all of that, but especially the people interested in with their technologies come together, invest in those, and aggregating those technology providers to at one place, and local NGO partners or local self-help groups who can be trained on the ground to manage on their own. So if this is kind of investment we can make, so our role will finish once you give the whole solution and get out and go into another place. The other model could be in terms of servicing the high-end payers and cross-subsidizing the poor. If that model also might be a good model for urban spaces, or so these are the thought processes that were going on. To give you an analogy of what we did in rural area, we provided a very low-cost solution which doesn't require too much of investment, ensuring that the quality is maintained, quantity is maintained by the people, because they take care of the amount of water they need. They budget the water, and they started understanding how much they need to pay for maintenance. So it is we call it locally owned, community operated model, where you just put in the initial investment, do the social processes, and at the end of the day, they started sharing the water and also paying for the water. And we also see people started coming to putting meters. Though in rural urban areas, we haven't done it. But in rural areas, when you bring this awareness, it is possible. And we did this way back, I think maybe 10 years back, with the support of Argyem Trust and 10 villages. I think those kind of models we can actually emulate further with new technology. Now, those days we don't have that solar and data matrix, but a combination of this, if we want to try out, especially in water scarce areas like Bundelkhand, where I'm operating, I would be happy to join hands with any of you to do this experiment and scalable models. And I request some of you to open doors for us to see how we can work together. The second option we have is in the urban spaces, we just started doing the water rejuvenation of tank rejuvenation program in Gautam Budh Nagar, and a huge amount of water we have rejuvenated. We need to see whether some of that water can be treated and supplied to local communities through ATMs. And there, I think since water is available and the technology choices can be much simpler without too much of a cost investment. And many of the things should be replaced with human-centric management processes, not just machine. Thereby, you can create local entrepreneurship and jobs.
Absolutely. I think, Lakshmi, I think on the metering, I fully agree, because I think there's initiatives in Africa, Q-taps, they do, because the utilities have a difficulty in collecting the revenues. I think some of them even have 40–50% of revenues that they are unable to collect from metered households. And this is where I think technology is playing a role to build up a business model where you can equip the water utilities with that technology-driven business model that is not only providing access or water services to the rural household, but also making sure the utility is funded and financially secure. So I think that's an excellent point. And the peer-to-peer trading, which you mentioned about the lakes, that again, the peer-to-peer trading And the exciting thing in India is the infrastructure is going to be there. Digital India, there's a huge push in the investment which is being done on that entire infrastructure. So how can the players in the ecosystem leverage that? Anyone else? Any thoughts on technology-driven business models?
I have one more small graph which I have pasted on the chat box. And this we made after Pia showed her time chart. This is our time chart, and this could be possible in 15 minutes flat from 350 water stations only because we had remote monitoring. And we have the live data, which my colleague and head of IT, Arvind, just pulled out when I said, Pia is showing a graph and you cannot. So I don't know whether, can everybody see that chart?
I'm unable to save it, Ravi, but I think can Arvind talk through that? Because Arvind, can you unmute yourself?
So I have, it's in the chat box, but anyway, everybody can click on it and see. It's a JPEG file, which I have uploaded in the chat box. But in any case, it has two peaks, morning and evening, unlike what Pia had shown. And similarly, we get data from all the 350 stations on financial data, dispensing data, and that was not hitherto possible if we did not have a data-driven solution, because many people cannot make the financials of each water ATM of theirs monthly if you do not have that kind of data ability to capture the complete financials online. Thank you.
Thanks, Ravi.
Can I ask a question? I'm actually wondering if now when you have 350, I like this cross-subsidy idea that was brought forward, and that's something we're working on. Actually, have a project now in Bangladesh where we're going to see if we can cross-subsidize by treating wastewater from textile, who will pay, and in the same community do small water systems where we will effectively cross-subsidize the cost and see if there can be full cost recovery, thinking of these multi-use water systems. That was something else. I'm curious if when you have 350 systems, is it possible, to cross-subsidize between systems if you run them, as one, so to say?
No, so asset renewal fund or sustainability fund is in fact common. About 12 or 15% cannot contribute to that, but they are recipient of the benefits. And that is the cross subsidy in a way. It may not be directly flowing from one station to another. And they are also, it's incumbent upon them to repay it over time so that nobody can say that my money was used by them. But that's a flex that among the 350, which is why we have virtually no downtime. In fact, because anybody who requires it has the spares as well as for the entire group of all these stations and the sustainability fund, asset renewal fund available on the go. And that is how the portfolio approach is helping us, Pia.
Yeah. Anyone else? Additional thoughts? We have another 5 minutes. So it would be great to hear from other members of the breakout session room.
Maybe I can ask more directly. I mean, can anyone share an experience they've had, with visiting such a water system, and what, if you can mention one or two challenges that you saw in the field as well? I think that would be really interesting, because this is where I see a disconnect often, that yes, we have data, but there's something else happening on the ground sometimes that we cannot capture. So I think it would be interesting if someone has reflections around that as well.
I would like to share something. I am Geeta from Honeywell. Honeywell has been working with Safe Water Network, and we have about 185 water stations. But we are all looking at cost effective. But I will also like to add, when we are saying cost effective, we'll also have to look at all our groundwater level have been stressed. So, we also have to look at the wastage of water. How much percentage of water in these technologies get wasted instead of becoming safe instead of becoming safe drinking water or used for drinking, and how this, for example, in we all know aero plants have a high wastage of water. And groundwater in most of the places in India is undergoing stress. And in another 5 years or 5 to 10 years, we will have more water stress ground level. So, we have to think of technology when we are thinking. Also, we have to, apart from the cost effectiveness, we also have to think about efficient water technology, where there is less wastage of water. This is what I just wanted to add to the challenges faced at the ground reality we are doing, but we are also wasting water. So that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
I think that's really true, and I actually had a reflection on that, because what we can see when we use the AQ taps, the water ATMs, I know Honeywell also has them, is that we've seen up to 65% increase in income because there's less non-revenue water from people not paying. But interestingly enough, we really also see water use become, more conservative. You're not spending water until the water tower is empty, which is what we often see if there's just a tap and no payment or metering. So maybe there's something in the group, and I think you, Kanera, also mentioned this with metering, even in rural areas, which is what we're seeing as well, has a positive effect on water management. Any thoughts on this? Because actually that leads back to the business model, right? Because then you get more income in and you're pumping less water. So I think that has a positive impact. But any thoughts on that from this group?
I can answer this one specifically because if it is multi-contaminant, highly saline water, one needs reverse osmosis because it is salinity, it's fluoride, it's high nitrates, everything. So you need reverse osmosis. However, there is a low TDS contaminated water, then we do use nano technology or ultrafilter technology, which has zero water wastage. Similarly, recently, under the Honorable National Green Tribunal has asked the Ministry of Environment and Forest to increase the recovery of reverse osmosis systems. And that law might come in within the next 3 to 4 months. From currently 50% to 60%, they want to take it to 70 to 80% of recovery. So those alternatives are also under testing on the field so that the wastewater from 50% can reduce to almost 20%. And even in this 20%, it is used in the nearby toilets or in the cleaning and animal feed, basically so that they are the water wastage is minimized to the extent possible. And wherever we can
I think the countdown, so it's 20 seconds. I think what's going to happen is, this is going to shut and we're going to go into the other room. So don't get, but I think after this countdown, we will go back to the webinar, and where the speakers will not just share their key takeaways from this breakout session, but also you'll hear from the others. So see you on the other side.
If everybody is around, how much time do we get for this?
Hi, Pooja. First of all, fantastic presentation, both you and Pravina. And I'm sorry that everything was cut short, but really appreciate you being able to condense all that information. We have about just under 24 minutes. Okay. So when we have about 13 people, so up to you in terms of how you would like to facilitate the introductions, and I'm here to assist anything on the content or technical side.
Yeah, so thanks, Shirley. What we will do is, since the topic is about existing trends and opportunities, and I really want to hear, we've actually talked about the opportunities for the work that we are doing in India, the crisis, the issues and all of that. I think I would open it up for some of our participants to talk through what are their perspectives on this topic, and also to share some existing trends and opportunities that we can pick up both from a private and public and the organizations that we all represent. So some things that we can pick up from all the participants, and I would be taking notes. Maybe Pravina, you could also do the the chairing of the session. So I'll just make some notes from the session.
Sure. We can let others participate. Surely, how do you moderate participation? It will be great.
Sure. Sure, if it's okay. I think we have 12 people. I think it's feasible just to get to know the room, if that's okay. Maybe just brief introductions, your name, what organization or company you represent, and where you are dialing in from, let's say. So if it's okay, we know our presenters, of course, but Mary, you're next on the list.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm here in Chicago. I'm with Global Waterworks, but I was just in an India conference last week called Water and Waste Management, and in one earlier today, Envirotech Asia. So India seems to be where water's happening, and our group Global Waterworks is a partner to SWAN with the Women in Water group. So we welcome your participation.
Welcome, and I know Mary is based out of Chicago, so it's even earlier than where I am in New York. So thank you for joining us so early in your morning. Moving on, I believe, Aline, you are calling in from Africa. Hello.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Aline Okello. I'm Mozambican, but I'm calling from Kenya at the moment. And I joined the session because I found the topic very interesting. And as Mary just said, India is leading the way in the water sector. I'm an hydrologist, and I'm currently working as a researcher and consultant in water resources.
Thank you for joining us, Aline. I'm moving very quickly to Arvind. Feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Arvind Deshmukh, and I work with the Safe Water Network. We are headquartered in Delhi, and I work with Mrs. Poonam Sevak. And I was very much interested in this because I do a lot of work on women empowerment and content development regarding women empowerment as well. So yeah, it was really very interesting listening to all of you. And Pooja, you delivered a great session. It was very inspiring. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here, and yeah, and a happy Women's Day to all of you.
Thank you all for joining. Moving on quickly, just name organization where you're calling from. Binayak, and I apologize for the pronunciation.
That's correct.
I am from Honeywell.
Great.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. And I believe we have Jalak.
Yes, hi. Jalak here from Honeywell.
Welcome, Jalak. Thank you for your support. And I have here next on the list, Narendra. Narendra, if you'd like to introduce yourself, you may just be on mute, so you need to unmute yourself. Moving next to Shivani.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. This is Shivani from Nandi Community Water Services. We are a social enterprise based in India, and we take care of the operations and maintenance of decentralized water centers across India. And so far we have set up over 640 water centers in 7 states of India. When I came to know about this session, it was interesting for me from 2 perspectives, because we are also in a digital journey trying to upgrade ourselves in the IT sector with respect to all our processes and all. We're trying to upgrade ourselves. So it was quite interesting, and I also wanted to understand it from the women perspective. So I'm really happy with your presentations. Hi Praveena, I don't know if you remember me. We worked a few years ago.
Yeah, I very well remember.
Amazing. You seem to be in the perfect place. We're moving very quickly, about five last people, and then we can get into the discussions. Meher Jatli.
Yes, hi. I am a market development analyst with Safe Water Network India, and I'm so happy to be a part of this conference. Thank you so much for letting me in, and I would love to hear everyone discuss about their endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you much for joining. I'm moving next to Venkatesh. Please feel free to unmute yourself as you wish. And moving next to Vibha. Okay. For those that have not muted themselves, please feel free. I'm going to hand it back to Praveena and Pooja to kick off the discussions or any questions that anyone has.
Thanks, Shirley. I think what we can do is quickly turn over to the participants to see if they have any tidbits or any insights to share on the trends and opportunities that we see with water, women, technology, and data. So this is a great opportunity for us to just interact and get to know what is happening in the open forum around this area, and what are some of the opportunities that all of us can leverage or talk about, and answer any questions that you may have.
I have a few that maybe can help kick off the discussion. I mean, you, Pooja, you mentioned, of course, also the role of corporates in this space. And sometimes we see kind of an interest of CSR, right? Corporate social responsibility. And then that leads to a lot of projects in the water sector. But I'm curious to you, in terms of Honeywell, is that what drives some of the activities that you have formed with your partners, or is there some other opportunity you see within this space that
attracted Honeywell in terms of partnerships?
Okay, so if I get you correct, Shirley, you're asking me why we picked up water as one of the programs for Honeywell, and what is the business linkage that we see on this program. In fact, when I was, we were on the, at Honeywell, we're just trying to put together a next 5-year sort of a strategy for Honeywell around CSR. And when I looked at water as one of the options, one of the learning that I have is as a part of our CSR program, we have a few principles that we want to operate on when it comes to really looking at some of the projects that we want to take over. So a couple of the ones that are very critical to us is definitely about what is in it for the business, and why should businesses start to think about some of the projects that we are trying to think through. When I look at water, I think it helps us to really address a couple of areas from a business point of view. Number one, I think health is a big factor when it comes to some of the communities that we can save if we give safe drinking water. And these are communities that, if they get safe water, they stay healthy, their productivity is strong, and there is a lot of goodwill that you create. So for us in these communities, even when we look at this whole aspect of the water management, and water management is not just about the water that is available, it's also about creating new and fresh sources of water. So if you look at a holistic picture, there are a lot of business upsides that we see for us as a community that we're addressing, because we are in places like Bangalore, Chennai, where these are places which are really have a lot of water crisis ongoing. Every year we hear about the issues. So if we address that, we're actually, number one, we're touching our employees and the communities that work very directly with us. Number two, we are impacting their health and their well-being because they have got water which is very critical and they're able to manage that well. Number three, we create a lot of goodwill as an employer as well, and also as a community player. So we are a responsible corporate in that community, and that gives us a lot of good branding and positioning for as a corporate. And lastly, because you're able to get those right connections in the government, in the community, in the decision makers that we want to really tap into for a plethora of things that we deal with as a corporate. So that is the overarching sort of a benefit that a corporate gets out of some of these programs, which are very niche.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for that detailed answer. Anybody else have any comments, questions about kind of trends, opportunities that you see in this intersection, or any points maybe for Pravina, who gave a fantastic presentation at the end? Please feel free to unmute yourself or to use the chat box, whatever you're more comfortable with.
This is Shivani from Nandi Water. Pooja, this question is for you mostly from the CSR perspective as well, because we depend on corporate funds for installation of our water centers. We're just trying to understand what has been the impact of the COVID for the current year, and is that shifting your focus from continuing to invest in these water projects to something else? I mean, what's your take on this?
Okay, so I think with COVID coming in, I think the blessing was that we had most of our water ATMs were already had this whole technology built into it. We were remotely managing and also inspecting how the water uptake was there. So that has been a great great in terms of from when we look at the technology intervention. But Shivani, to your point around how do we want to take up this project, we definitely want to, there are a few things that we want to take up. Number one, I think in the current shape or form, the way the project really exists, we need to make sure that we do a little bit of remodeling of the program to make it much more cost effective, because when we do a little bit of research on ground, we find that we may not have the best model when it comes to the cost structures. So we're really looking at rebuilding and remodeling it to make sure it is cost effective, and ensuring that, you know, in India, it's all about sustaining it and scaling it. So for us, sustaining will only come if we are able to make it very self-sustainable. So that's another area that we are looking at. How do we remodel it again from a pricing point of view, or things where we make it sustainable, and water aunties, as you saw, they're able to maintain it, run it independently, and there are some case studies that we've also explored from other foundations, and we're looking at really trying to renew this entire project. So that is something that we are really looking at. And to add to the water ATM project, we're also looking at certain other complementing projects like water rejuvenation, and trying to see how we can do some projects around water conservation. So that's for us, that is more like a complementing project to take on. So from a you know, way forward, I think these are the things that we are thinking of.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pooja.
Yeah, please. Anybody else have a question for Praveena, Pooja, or any other thoughts on their own from their own experiences? I see, Mary, you dropped in a chat here. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, just Praveena, really good overview of the IWRM. I mean, the total diverse water sources, and I didn't see atmospheric water on there. I know that that's beginning to take off in India. I'm just curious to hear what your experience or exposure and expectations are, both of you, on that.
Honestly, we have not looked at the atmospheric water aspect yet. It's because of the fact that the areas where we are working in the rural communities, we see that if you looked at the water balance in its totem, there is substantial amount of water which is not harvested well, right? The atmospheric water, in my opinion, becomes very relevant in the urban communities where there is, very acute crisis. And the areas where we are working on is substantially rural. And we see that if there can be some amount of harvesting practices to, harvest whatever comes through rain, your runoffs from the rain and others are done. It can be working with agroforestry in your catchment areas and all that sort, can actually do a huge difference in terms of addressing the problems in the marginalized communities where we work. Atmospheric water will be very, will be a lot more relevant to the urban scenarios, especially maybe 3 or 4 major big cities in India. And we have consciously been a little away from the urban water aspect because as an organization, we have had the vision to spend the money where most people find it difficult to spend because of the access regions or because of the fact that there may be more cost to access those communities which are very remote. So, but we will definitely want to take it up because the Wash Connect app that we kind of shared here is just a beginning. It's just looking at making wash projects sustainable based on IWRM. I've kind of seen Global Waterworks publications and white papers, and I completely agree that if you look at IWRM as a solution, and if you want to upscale it into a usable tool, it can be usable for your industries. And we have your water stewardship that is kind of taken care of, right? International Water Stewardship, they have their own tools, applications, which are helping industries become sustainable with water use. Similarly, we are also thinking of making agriculture as an industry, like this app, become more adaptable for agriculture as a industry or a water user, become far more sustainable. Because if you look at it, the amount of water spent in India for producing a kilo of rice is 4 to 5 times more than that of what China is taking, right? Or for that matter, if you have to compare with the most water efficient country, Israel, our water consumptions are absurd. So we are trying to see how this entire tool, beginning with wash, maybe also become more relevant to other water users. The biggest shareholder of water consumption in India is held by the agriculture industry badge, by all the small farmers, medium farmers. There are many problems. The farmers' welfare as such, fragmentation of land itself creates challenge, but there is also a huge opportunity in that space for water to be optimized. So that's the area we as an organization are looking at. We have not yet come to atmospheric water as a point of focus, but we would definitely take it up internally. Thank you.
That makes perfect sense. Thanks.
Yeah. I have a question to both about, or everyone on this session, actually, because it's for everyone. Actually, Aline, you had a question first. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask that for Pravina?
Hello, everyone. So Aline again. So Pravina, I really liked your presentation, and I saw the work that you guys are doing on the app. I was curious if at the moment the app is only available in India. I quickly searched it and I couldn't download from Kenya. And then any prospects of making it internationally available. And also, I worked in an app earlier on rainwater harvesting for Africa. And one of the challenges that we had is how do you do the training of populations that are in rural areas? Because sometimes they don't even have access to the smartphones that can run the app. So what is your experience with that?
So yeah, Aline, thank you for that question. This app is available on the Google Play Store. Maybe if you can, I'll drop my email address. I'll share with you the details further, or maybe through Shirley, I can share it with all the people who are present, where it's available, how we can download and how we can use it. Regarding training people in rural areas where there is no smartphone, we are in India, the scenario is such that everybody has, at least one smartphone. That's how the scenario has become. In a community, in rural areas, there are at least 5 to 6, or let's say there are 50 families. Of that, at least there are 30 phones which are really, smartphones. And that's the reason we came up with the fact that we do not want just a toolkit. We want it to be on the phones available to people. But for areas where there's no internet, the app was developed on a paper toolkit, has been developed as an outcome of a paper toolkit. Maybe I can share it with you, and maybe if you can talk sometime with me, we can see how to make the toolkit available in formats which are very relevant to the rural communities. And the trainings are very simple. We have a lot of open source tools for people to be trained on using GIS tools. If you do not have smartphones, you can actually use your garments, which may be available with people, and that 1 or 2 people who have access to the garments can actually go around these rural areas, getting those data points. The data points are very simple, to be honest. The geographical locations is the only thing which is spatial. All of the data points can be on the paper and still be moved onto a system, right? That's the only differentiator, which may require a smartphone or a garment for that matter, right? We can work out mechanisms to make the toolkit available partly on the smartphone, partly on the paper, and you can implement it. So thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, it's a great question, Aline. And essentially all of us with our smartphones become immediate data points, right, ourselves. I have a question. We have about 4 minutes left and we will be automatically transported back to the main room for key takeaways. Question for you both and for the participants here is kind of the role of financing, right? We talk about these great projects that you're all doing, but at the end of the day, if women are not supported financially in their projects, whether it's NGO, private sector, public sector, the results are often limited, right, in terms of implementation. So I guess for you both, kind of what role do you see in finance or impact investment as an opportunity here to drive a more proactive role of women in water management? So kind of a general question, but I think it could be useful for all. I don't know, whoever wants to take this, whether it's the speakers or anyone else on this session, feel free.
Pravina, do you want to go for this one? Because you've been there for a long time now.
See, what I've seen is that, to start with, Shirley, just want to give you an example. My life has been a car full of men, with me being the one woman in that. When I'm going in rural areas, doing my surveys, doing impact studies, whatever. And the field staff, the number of field staff used to be in the ratio of 2:10, like 2 women and 10 of men, right? If you see, finance is not the reason why women cannot participate. Like if you see finance as a reason for WASH sector not getting funded, then that's something. But what I see is the reasons why women don't participate is not so much to do with finances, but if they participate, they also become financially independent, right? When women participate as decision makers, by the virtue of their participation, they become financially independent. But for them to participate, the hurdles have been that the remoteness of the communities, the requirement that they have to travel long distances and very arduous modes of transport, for them to be part of any solution has been the one which has been deterring. Societally, from traveling, and like there are many aspects to it, right? But what I see is technology leveler. In many ways, technology has been a leveler to allow for women's participation. See, look at you. You just said that you have a 10-month-old baby right there, but you're able to participate thanks to Zoom, sitting from home. If this is available for every woman, like I just showed you Hina, I couldn't speak a lot about Hina. Hina's family doesn't like her to move out of a community. Had it been for the fact that she had to take care of the region and she has to report to a head office, which is 50 kilometers away, we would have had to lay her off for the sake of the project. What is this phone doing? What is this app doing? It's allowing her to be part of the solution in how much ever the societal conditions allow her. To work on the societal conditions which require women to be far more empowered is another question. That's a parallel track of work many of us are part of. But given the fact that this is the reality, we are working on solutions which allow for a lot more women to participate. So I see technology has the biggest leveler. Finance as such, I say if they participate, they become financially far more independent. So this is my reading of the scenario. Having looked at many women on the ground, some of our field staff, they had to quit because if they're marrying, the husband is in another geography, they cannot participate, they have to move on, and they'll have to quit, right? So these things are slowly being undone by technology and virtual technology predominantly. So Pooja, take it on.
I think we have a few seconds and I will not be able to wrap up, but I do know a very good example from my telecom days when we had diktats coming from Panchayat that women can't use phones. And I remember we used influencers to go into these communities to allow for women to have phones, because they would say that they would blame it, all the rape cases, all the issues why women are eloping from their homes is all because of phones and the fact that they had phones in their lives. But I think what really helped is to have an ecosystem, to have these self-help groups, to have a lot of these. Yeah.
It's okay. Thank you very much for that. We have about 10 seconds, but you can continue also in the main session. Thank you all for joining, and then we'll end with the key takeaways in the main session. Thank you both.
I'm heading the monitoring and evaluation department here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you. So yes, and I'm also supporting in knowledge and communications and the sector engagement verticals. Yeah.
Awesome. So for those who are able to also join in and share at any time, feel free to participate. This is an opportunity to speak with some of this, with Poonam, ask some questions, and also we can have some interactive discussion. So our breakout room theme today is, given the potential benefits of women, tech, and water, what is inhibiting growth? And I guess the focus area might be, what are some of the current obstacles or challenges at this intersection? And how have these challenges changed over time? I think, especially with the use of technology, a lot of things have changed, especially with rapid deployment of remote monitoring. So Poonam, maybe I'll turn it over to you and you can share some insights, and
yes, so welcome
to chime in,
to
anyone.
Yeah, welcome to all the participants in this breakout session. We have heard a lot about women participation, how important it is in all the fields, but more so in WASH, water, health and sanitation sector. We have heard everybody is wanting to create gender sensitive policies, gender sensitive programs, planning, implementation systems, but the woman is a very big missing piece in water. What is it that is inhibiting her growth? Is the question which we want to ask. and what can be done. First, let us understand what are the barriers that we don't get a participation. I am not speaking about the grassroots women who are not there. I am also speaking of, do we ever see women in utilities? We do not. Do we see women in the entire value chain being rewarded as well as men and as being trained as good as men? We do not. So what is it that is inhibiting the participation of women in this sector? So now I welcome thoughts. So, and let me begin with Ronald to have your thoughts on what do you think should be done to get more women in the wash sector.
I think we have Ritika on the call. Ritika, maybe you can help answer some of these questions.
Thank you. You started on a very good note, Poonamji, that we know that women are missing in the water sector. Not because I think the biggest challenge that we all face currently, and that's what I personally feel, that we have always seen women as consumers. We have always seen women as the end consumers. We have not seen women who as resource managers for these programs. We have not seen women as change makers. I have always felt it's not only in the water sector, it's per se the utility sector, it's even the energy sector that we see. Women are not only missing at the policies, they are not even part of the policy making decisions. They are not even at the table when these decisions are being made. So that is why most of the time, whenever any policies are made, they are gender blind. And I'm using the word gender blind because they do not even understand that every policy can impact a man and a woman differently. We have always seen that all the policies going to impact everybody in a similar manner. As it has come out in our presentations earlier, most of these needs are all based on the gender roles and responsibilities that we all have. And we know that women spend most of the time collecting the water for their households. Women are responsible for the sanitation of their households, yet they are not involved in any decision-making process, yet they are not involved, or they do not even have a seat at the table when these policies are being made. So this is where, and I think this is the biggest obstacle for all of us to meet with. Once we have that met with, then we can kind of start talking about all this. We have to first make everybody realize that women are not only consumers, they're the change makers, they're the agents of, they're the resourceful managers. They are not only the house makers, they're the managers. We have to change the terminology that we all use. We have to bring in that positive gender norm changes in our society. And when we talk about gender, we all talk about at the personal level or the individual level, the community level, and then the whole level that we talk about. So that we all have to start thinking from the household level, how we have to first work with the men to make them think that the women in your house are there for other reasons. They are the ones who are using it. Maybe they know the solutions to that they're looking outside at house. Ask them, make them participate in making the household decisions when they are talking about the water and sanitation. Don't kind of exclude them in those chats. And I think that is where we have to start, at the household level. Then reach to the community, and I think that the government will be part of it eventually. So start it at the household level. That is where I will start, and I would like to hear from others what they feel about it. Thank you.
So actually, this is a very, very good starting point, Ritika. I quite like the concept that for bringing about the first change at the micro level within the household, it is the thinking of the men that needs to be changed. They have to be drawn into more household work. They have to be drawn to let women have the seat at the table when decisions pertaining to water and sanitation are happening, right? So I think this is a very, very good starting point. And whenever anybody begins a program with a change of I, the individual, then the community, so you move in circle with each circle growing outside, so the journey can be facilitated and it can be smooth. So any more ideas from anyone in the panel who would like to say what are the other bottlenecks and how can we unlock it?
I guess this is Prabhat Saxena from Seaway. I would say that Ritika has presented a very nice form that it has to start from the grassroots level. And I would like to advocate that there is a very big gap in the top-down approach also. When we talk in terms of policy making and implementation, if we have women at the top, the outlook to the same problem would be very different, and the proposed solutions also would be different. So we need a bottoms up and a tops down approach at the same time. This is the one which will result into fast accelerated solutions coming in, which will be acceptable to the society.
Thank you for your thoughts, Prabhat. And we completely agree that it has to be a mix from bottoms up to tops down. And when these two merge together, then we will be able to draw up a better and a stronger program.
I can give a further elaboration of this, that there is a very well documented case study which comes from South Africa, wherein a woman was appointed to the board of a mining company. And in that coal mining company, there used to be trucks falling down into the deep gorge because it was an open pit mining. So for the first time when she asked the question in the board, that why do you have so many accidents? Almost all the men there laughed at it, that you don't know that in this industry these accidents do occur. But being a woman herself, she said, no, I want to know why are the accidents happening. Just don't brush it aside by saying that accidents do happen. And after 2 years, the result was that the accident had come to a manageable proportion of less than 5% of what they were 2 years before. So the gender sensitive approach can really make a very big difference. Maybe this may need a policy change, like has been done in countries like Norway, where they mandated that at least 10 or 15% of the board has to be manned by women. So those are the kind of enabling actions which can transform very fast.
So thank you for these two examples of Norway and Africa, and I am sure that these are the types of solutions which we need if we want to bring about a change. Can anybody draw and bring out an example or some conversations around how these strategies can be adopted for WASH? Sapir, who else do we have in our room who can?
Yeah, it would be great to get some audience participation. I see there's someone named Monica Singh. Can you join us and unmute your mic and share where you're from? I'll call on some others. Reena Kumari. If you unmute your mic, you can participate in the conversation. See, there's also Ronald.
Hello, Reena this side.
Hi, Reena.
I'm from Safe Water Network.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
Given some of the conversation that we've had, let's see if there's anyone else also on the call. Shweta. Okay. And I see Deepak and Jillian. Okay. Well, we have a few.
So this question is, yeah, if we can have, if Mr. Mahmood, if you can hear us, can we welcome you to have your thoughts?
Okay. Well, Poonam, I have a question for you.
Jillian is managing the work in Ghana. She can bring in some stories from Africa also for our benefit.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Yes, Jillian.
Hi. Trying, I don't know if I'm on video, but so it's interesting because I think part of the difference is that we're not seeing in Ghana, our experience is that we're not seeing as much of a push from the government and on the policy side for an active role for women within participating in the value chain. There is a policy around management at the local level of women in the water management teams at the community level. So 30% need to be women. One of the leadership roles needs to be held by a woman. But it's been a real challenge at integrating women into the actual supply chain, kind of on the ground. A lot of this is resource driven, that there is this really difficult balance between the capacity building and targeted outreach and targeted training that would need to happen to bring the women in the community to the same capacity level, or the knowledge and skills level, and balancing with being able to provide safe water supply on a regular basis. However, one of the things that we're exploring is, how do we integrate remote monitoring into our Safe Water Network's implementation in Ghana? That's something that Poonam has talked about, that we've done for many years now in India, and I think it really does play a key role in facilitating women's participation in the value chain. Right now, that's not something that is happening at the small water enterprises operated in Ghana, and I think that's a main difference in terms of the challenges faced by women. That for women to participate, there would need to be much more of a presence on site. It would be much more difficult to balance, a woman's many different roles. What we have seen is when women are involved, they tend to serve in a kind of a vendor and sales capacity. So, managing the water points in terms of responding to consumers, of topping up mobile money accounts so that consumers can pay for water. However, the feedback that we've received so far is that this is something they do more of out of an interest for the community, rather than as a livelihood, as the main livelihood or the main income generating activity in their lives. Really, it's part of the community pride. So they want to participate in enabling safe water supply for their communities, and so they're willing to be there, and to facilitate that access for other members of the community, but that it's not, if there were a higher level of involvement required, it probably wouldn't be where they dedicated their time, because we especially the women in the room know that there are a lot of different roles, and there are a lot of different responsibilities. So by serving as a vendor where they can be on site for a few hours a day, in the morning, in the afternoon, it's the right level of commitment. And so I think remote monitoring would help make that level of commitment more palatable for operations as well.
Thank you very much, Jillian. So it very clearly spells out that political will, political participation, and the thrust for inclusion of women in the program and giving them space is so important. And if that is the missing piece, the entire story is out.
Poonamji, I would like to kind of tell you out here, like even the government of India has made a provision in out here that 33% of the women have the reservations in all the water little bodies. Yeah. But again, even if the government is making these favorable provisions, it is the patriarchal society that we all live in, and that is inhibiting the women to participate in that. Even if they are elective, they do not have the decision-making voice at this stage, which is mostly governed by the men. And I think it is because women do not have the confidence, because they do not have the access to the information that men have. And that is what is kind of inhibiting them to be a part of this thing, to part of these decision-making bodies. Government is doing what they can, and we have to give the credit to our government out here. Having a 33% reservation is pretty good, but having that voice out there is what is very needed. And that voice can only come if we educate our women, let them be part of all these things from the beginning, so that they build that confidence, they build that information that they need to talk at these levels, which is mostly governed by the men. So we have to start working on teaching our women as well, educating them and giving them the same resources that men have and they do not have for the right education and awareness and information. Thank you.
So absolutely right, Ritika. What we basically need to do and what is the missing piece is, it has to begin right at the developmental level when the person is very young, that they have access to education, training, skills, ability to move, breaking away the patriarchal mindset. That also has to break at home. The government can only bring in the law, as Ritika ji has just said. So these are some of the real-time issues. Another thing which I can bring from our experience of Safe Water Network working is, even when you bring in women who are working as self-help group women, which means they already were into some form of economic activity before they were asked to work in the water sector. Any economic activity, be it art, artisan, handicraft, or healthcare, anything, but they were exposed to work. But they were not ready to work in the water program. Why were they not ready to work? Because they didn't want to interact with machines. They thought that if they are working with water and they are looking after the store, the time commitment is very high. Then they themselves thought that they are incapable of learning and managing. So everything was a process. And in any program, if you are wanting to involve women, you need 3 or 4 things. First of which is flexibility. That is to be given to the woman because she is always struggling between the home and the workspace. And also because society has put many restraints on her own time and individuality. Then the second thing which you need is training, and you need deep pockets, so that if the training is not successful in go 1 and it requires 3 times, then you have to have deep pockets if you're wanting to get women into the program. Thirdly, I would like to address the problem just spoken by Ritika, that the men are basically cornering all the seats on the table which are reserved for the woman. Lack of information, lack of participation. How does she grow? And it is completely stifling. Whereas time and again it has been proven, and it has also been just now proven by the example from Africa which we saw, that the mining accidents reduced. But for this transformation to happen and working with the grassroots, our experience says it's a very, very tough journey. And I very much would like to, developmental agents, the NGOs, to adopt the gender disaggregated data reporting, because that shows 2 things. If a facility or resource was provided, how much did men get? How much did women get? Their needs are different. And once we have that type of a data, we can do targeted program delivery. Maybe it will change. So amongst all the gender data which were discussed, I felt this indicator was a very strong indicator.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, over to the group. Any more points you would like to bring? If not, then my question to Ritika is, Ritika, how do you propose that we take the woman up the value change from change makers to resource managers?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important when we kind of talk about women not as consumers and make them part of the entire value chain. We have to kind of look at our programs from all levels. First, equity level, where we provide women the equal opportunity. 2, get trained to build their skills, to access to information for all those needs that we all talk about all the time. Take the trainings closer to the home, because as we've talked about, one of the reasons that women do not participate, and then you kind of talked about the time paucity. So as we kind of talk about that, take the trainings home, closer to their homes, so that they can be trained, their skills can be built, there can be capacity can be built. I think third thing is, when we feel that we do not have women's voice at all these events, we need, and we have seen when we have kind of worked with the self-help groups, they become a collective voice. So strengthen these self-help groups where they become the collective voice of these women, and they kind of promote gender equality and women empowerment. They show these women as the change makers and the resourceful managers. So I would kind of stress upon build, strengthen the self-help groups, and kind of work in collaboration with them to bring out that confidence that we need for women to show that they are the change makers. They're not only the consumers, and they can be a part of the entire value chain. And importantly, which we should not miss, is as we work towards women's empowerment, don't leave the men behind. Engage the men and boys at the home and make them realize the importance of how the women's empowerment, and make them the equal players in our work towards this. I think these are some of the factors that we should always consider and work towards too. Thank you.
I think we're going to be pushed back into the main conference area now. So thank you everyone for
Thank you.
Hope you all enjoyed the breakout sessions. I think I was on the breakout session chaired by Pierre. We also had Ravi from the Safe Water Network. So what would be good is if we can have each of the moderators or the speakers in each of the breakout sessions to share some of the key takeaways, especially on that topic that you were discussing in the room, because that will be of the benefit for everyone. So that the entire knowledge sharing element which we want to capture in this. So let's start with possibly the US aid. So given the potential benefits of women, tech and water, what is inhibiting growth? So can we have Ritika? Ritika, can you share your key takeaways from that breakout session, please?
Fred, I was not taking the notes, but my key takeaways is we talked about the major challenges that we talked about, that we do have some favorable policies for women to be a part of these WASH events, but it is the patriarchal society that we all live in that women do not participate, primarily because we are not working towards building their skills. We do not have an access to information that they need to be a part of all this. Most of these events or these decision-making meetings they're always kind of cornered by men because they have a louder voice in the system, and women are left behind all those things. So biggest challenge that we all kind of found was there are some favorable policies, but it is the system, the society that we need to work on, changing some patriarchal norms, and that we have to start from the household level. We talked about things at the household level, community level, and then we work to the government. The things has to be from the bottoms up, and then there was a very good point that was raised, I'm forgetting his name, that we have to talk simultaneously from the bottoms up and talk through down. We have to have the government, we have to have more role models out there to show that women are to be seen more than consumers, as a change maker, as the resourceful managers to bring in that change that we all want to see. So it has to work simultaneously from the top to bottom and bottom to up. So that is how we all have to work. And as we all work towards it, don't leave the men behind, involve them when you are empowering women. So the idea is not, as I kind of talked about it earlier as well, it's all power dynamics. We are not working here to disempower one to empower the other. The idea is gender equality. So let's work towards equality and not empowerment. That is what we kind of talked about. Poonamji, can you just bring in any other points that I may have missed in? Thank you.
Thanks, Ritika. Poonam? Poonam, are there any other points that you would like to add to that first question, given the potential benefits? What is inhibiting growth?
Poonamji, you're in.
Yeah. Yes, Poonam.
Adding to what Ritika has said, that Another important point which was put up in table was very good models for us to adopt and study are from the Nordic countries. And there was also a case study which showcased that if women are put on the table, for example, it was a case of a mining company in Africa who was there was a woman on the senior position, and since she came, she drove one KPI, which was reduction in accidental deaths. So this is the type of role and the decisions and policy influence which women are able to bring in. So it is very important to have the voice of the woman at the table. And at the same time, this voice has to have information, access and availability, because many a times walls are built around her and the information is not shared. So that becomes another defeating factor. And I think Ritika has covered the points absolutely well. Ritika, thank you so much for it.
Thanks, Poonamji. Then the next one, the one which Pia was kind of moderating in the breakout session. What are innovative business models for smart water management? Pia, you want to share some of the key takeaways from that breakout session, please?
Yeah, thank you, Frederick, and also for hosting it with me and with Amir. Just a reflection on what the previous group said. I think you're so right. We need to make sure we're not alienating the men on this journey, because that will be detrimental to what we're trying to do. And then also speaking as a woman in the water sector and sitting at the level I do, I'm the only woman in my leadership team, for instance. So I think one of these areas that you really highlighted now here at the end, that you're sort of on your own, is so true. And one of the things that we're talking about internally is also the need to not promote, one who sits alone, but that you typically need, I think you say 3 or 5, the research is showing, at the same time, because otherwise you will be isolated and let's say misunderstood. So I think that there's a huge potential here also for the private water sector to look into our own practices around gender. And this is something that we have been working quite intensively on the past 6 months. Looking back to the business models, I think one of my key takeaways was this with expectations. A business model sounds like this is something that can be commercially viable, like there is a business to be made around bringing water to some of the world's poorest to make sure that women and children get equal access or better access, because it largely affects women and children. And here we just have a scenario where there is free water, where we are talking about the most vulnerable, and business model is maybe not the answer to everything. It's also a question of who has actually responsibility for what. Some of it may need to be tax paid, donated, and there's just this maybe need to have a discussion around expectations to what it means to bring water to some of the poorest, and completely supporting that as private sector as well. From my end, I said in Ghana, for instance, we are in a public-private partnership with rural water, but now water is free. And obviously, I'm not going to shut off the water, even though people are not paying and we're not getting an income, because these are some of the most vulnerable people in the world. That will be the same in India. How do we solve that? Because that's not a business model when there's no income. Then we talked about cross-subsidizing and maybe exploring more the ability to cross-subsidize, either as a portfolio of water systems, 300-400 water systems, putting them together in a portfolio, or even cross-subsidizing across different water uses. And then we talked about water stress as something that was also highlighted as a shared area across all the topics and speakers, where water management is really something that's important and that data enables us to act on, where a business model, or it affects your business model or your smart water management in the sense that, when we can address non-revenue water, when we can make sure that we are not, over pumping or actually have a track on how water tables are moving in specific areas. We can also bring down water use in areas to make sure it's used efficiently. For instance, if you do have meters or payment for water, this will typically also affect non-revenue commercial water losses, as well as a more efficient use of the water available. So these were sort of my key takeaways, but I want to give the word to Frederick and Amir as well to make sure I didn't lose a key point here.
No, absolutely. I mean, there was that efficiency element as well, you know, to make sure that the systems are in place to drive efficiency. So if you're providing water, you can also drive efficiency and conservation at the household level. Heaters in homes doesn't mean it is for charging households. It's possibly also households start consuming less. So you're providing less water in the first case. So I think certainly that's, then let's hand it over now to Honeywell. Pooja, you want to talk us through some key takeaways on what are the next big exciting trends and opportunities that we were discussing in the breakout room?
Sure. So we had a good discussion around what are the trends and opportunities that we see in really empowering women and making them central to this whole solution that we want, and how technology can play a role in enabling that. So a couple of discussions that we had were around using technology, especially talking through the example that Praveena gave of the app. So that was in a good discussion around what that app can do and how it can enable, and some of the features of how it can take on, and the usability of some of these technologies and trends. Another area was around the funding opportunity and how funds can play a big role in empowering women. And that came from Shirley. Shirley, please add to this if you have any further areas to add. And I would also call in Praveena, please add to some of the discussions that we had and just help us put together the overall perspective of how we were looking at certain trends and opportunities that we see. There were definitely questions around how corporates can play a role, and that was largely aimed at how Honeywell has played a critical role in enabling safe water and integrating the whole women empowerment into the model that we have, and how some of the corporates, how do they see and utilize this opportunity as a business case to be able to take up some of these projects. So that was largely the discussion we had, and I would hand it over to Shirley and Praveena to add to this.
Shirley?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for that, Pooja. Yeah, we had a fantastic discussion again with all the participants. And one thing that came across, and this is well explained through Praveena's case study, is the influx of mobile phones, and really mobile phones as our own kind of sensors that we have with us, and how the WASH app is actually, you're able to use it and leverage it also in rural environments, because it essentially deploys GIS and open source, again, information. So that essentially gives that access and that data to all those with mobile phones, also in settings in order to encourage constant reliability, and the trainings are very much kept simple for all. But Praveena, please feel free to add, given your experience.
Praveena, anything to add?
Yeah, I think Shirley summed it up, and also Pooja did a good wrap up of what we discussed. One specific thing that came up in our discussion, and which I think is something to think upon or ponder upon for us, was what is the next big exciting trends and opportunities? This question means different things to different people. Like for me, using mobile phones in India is something of course, we will be using technology like mobile phones. But a question from one of the participants from Africa came that we do not have smartphones everywhere. But I think what you are providing is a great solution. How do I go about it? So the next big exciting trends and opportunities are something we need to define for ourselves to with the baseline of where we come from. Like what is our context, right? And we were just it was a very interesting discussion, which made me ponder over if the solution that we offer on the app is and kind of saying that, oh, it kind of makes the toolkit, which is in the paper, usable, to kind of saying that we need to have solutions which fit context, and starting from 0 to 10 and going from 10 to 30, all of it is, next exciting trends for all of us with where we start from. So in a way, the next big exciting trends can be that making a paper toolkit partly technologically driven, partly people driven, and working in the context, right? So this is what I kind of got thinking from the last session. And surely maybe you should go over the financing part of it, because I think you had a very poignant point regarding that.
I can briefly. We were talking a little bit how we talk about all these exciting opportunities and benefits, and it's clear that there's this intersection happening between women, tech, and water. But often the blockage can be actually unlocking or tapping into finance for women to take a more proactive role in water management. And there were some interesting mixed opinions about that, whether financing is the blockage or it's actually just being more proactive and getting involved in projects that can actually then open up financial opportunities. And so that's kind of an open debate or an open question that very curious, and I think we could spend hours talking about. But thank you again for the great session.
Thanks, Shirley. I guess, we're keeping on time, so just wrapping it up in 10 minutes. Now, before I get into the wrapping summary of the webinar, Poonam, any closing remarks from your side before I kind of do my last part? Any closing remarks, Poonam?
Yes, Frederick, it was a very, very rich experience, and it was very good to have different people from Grundfos, from Honeywell, from Frank Water, from USAID to converge, and we could bring cross-sector collaboration, cross-concept collaboration, because we were able to, on this panel, discuss things not in a silo that this group is doing that, but completely all the problems were laid out on the table, all the success and positions where each organization is positioned today. For example, it was very touching to know that Grundfos is using artificial intelligence and are measuring so many billion liters of water is lost. How do you carry that information to the last technician in the ecosystem who has to go and repair without corruption of information? Yeah. Or how Honeywell is wanting to put women in the center through their 4A strategy and program.
Perfect.
How Praveena and her team have together built an app, and I was very surprised to see it was an all-women's team who developed the app, who implemented the app, who taught the people, got the data, analyzed. So, and these people are working at the grassroots level, and the people lack education, they lack skills, they lack time, they lack motivation. This is a huge story. And finally, what USAID brought to the table, it works very well for everybody in the sector, that when we are creating a program which is central to the woman, keep the woman at the center, get disaggregated data. And when you are working for her, whether it is through policy, governance, economic empowerment, skill, whatever, do not forget that for her to be successful, it is the men or the boy who have to be taught to be a partner in her journey of success. So for me, it was a very, very enriching panel, and I am very grateful to all my panelists, to all my participants. The time just flew by and we are here. But great having all of you, and over to you, Fred.
Perfect. Thanks, Poonam. You've summarized all my key takeaways from the presentation, so that saves my part of putting those points across. Gillian, from your side, any kind of closing remarks before I close the session?
Sure. Actually, I was just writing it into the chat because I didn't know if I was going to have a chance to speak. I think it's really important that we continue telling these stories, these case studies about the Frank Water apps, the team that built the Frank Water app, the water aunties that Poonam discussed, because not only does it show that success is possible, and it shows the financing environment, the policy environment, the implementer environment, that there are examples that we could share of this happening, of this working in reality on the ground. But I think it's also really important for those stories to be seen by women who might be interested in participating and not feel that there's a space for them. Maybe, or Poonam mentioned in a breakout session, are afraid of engaging with technology, or not sure whether they have the skills to do it, that there is a pathway for them, and that there are examples.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. Firstly, now the thanks of what should I say? Thank you remarks. Firstly, thanks for everyone who attended this. We've seen participants from the US, from Africa, from Europe. Thanks for taking the time and participants from India as well. Thank you. Thanks for the speakers, Pia, Pooja, Ritika, and Pravina. Excellent presentations. Poonam for setting the context and moderating the panel, as it were. But to organize this entire session, this was an idea which came from Nat. He's no longer with Safe Water Network, but we want to kind of recall him because it was thought, and it was excellent that we worked together. But the Safe Water Network team, Gillian, thanks for your kind of support in the last 3 months in setting this up. But I think the SWAN forum, Safir, the extra time and the effort that you've been spending on this, thanks so much for that, Shirley, Shaina, and Ahmed. Thanks for all the time that you have spent over the last few months in setting this up. And I hope everyone has benefited. The recording will be passed through to you. So even if people who have not attended this, they would like to see this, I would encourage, and possibly also a report of this session we're putting together and circulating, because this is a key topic which is going to continue. And I hope there are connections made for future engagements with the people who attended this session. On that note, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.